I think we'll try and get some clarification during this afternoon's round table session. But I understand under the MOU that was signed in April that whole visa issue, particularly for this expanded FIT sector, is very much on the agenda. Adele, one of the issues I think that you're concerned about is, I guess, the complexity of the market. Not only is China a rapidly evolving market, but it's such a broad market, and I guess it's going to be continuing to evolve throughout our collective lifetimes.
Now, one of the strengths of that is that as we only have 4 individual operators in the room, it's to get more of the industry engaged and recognizing that there's the potential within the different emerging sophisticated segments of the Chinese market that will fit with their product offering. So that's a fantastic opportunity to maybe get much more than 4 people around the table wanting to hear about what research is available to inform their business practices. Now, on the converse of that is the challenge we have right now when we go to China, and they absolutely love our marketing. They have a burning desire to come and visit Australia, but that's because we've been fairly straightforward with a very direct and clear message about what Australia is. Now, as soon as we start marketing to those various segments, we also risk eroding that very clear positioning that Australia has. We know that we are now competing with 140 countries that have ADS approval. But as soon as we start targeting all of those segments, come opportunities, but then that big challenge of losing Australia's super clear definition within those markets. So I think we're going to have to weigh the benefits of those and figure out the exact right time to start adding complexity to that message.
Don, you mentioned in your comment earlier that the language issue in communicating was an issue, and I guess we can wrap into that some cross-cultural misunderstandings. Do you have any comments or observations on that?
Yeah, I do, John. Maybe just one other thing. I notice there's 4 very good operators here, but maybe the name of the seminar and the location of it. The industry, the suppliers, have been bombarded and they've got a lot of demands at the moment. So time is an issue for them. And the other thing, of course, there are a number of operators on the Gold Coast which possibly would have attended, but I think time was a huge commitment. But I don't take that away from suggesting that it's not a good thing to come to. Time is a pressing issue. Just on the language one, just a new innovation, and I thought it was very, very clever. I spoke with this institution. It's the Wide Bay Institute of TAFE, which for the international visitors is like a technical and vocational college. And there's formerly a Chinese national who has been a Mandarin teacher, and he set up an online Mandarin learning portal specifically for the travel and tourism industry. Initially, it was going to be you had to go to a college to get onto the web conferencing facility. I suggested that wasn't going to work, and he's now worked it so that you could do it online, whether you're in your car, in your hotel, or in your business. And once a week for 40 weeks, there was a training facility. And if you don't get in there on that particular time, you could look at it, it would be videotaped and it would be recorded, and you could go in and look at that 1.5 hour lesson on introductory Mandarin. There's shorter courses as well. The real attraction, I thought, for the tourism industry, and I've pushed this through ATEC, John, was that for Queensland businesses, the whole year was going to cost $190. So about 40 weeks of lessons of basic Mandarin. You won't be fluent, but I think it would be a fabulous introduction for frontline staff to get a lot more technical skills about a lot more than just the traditional greetings and farewells. And I think that's going to help a lot of businesses that are partially involved in the industry that may not be as large as Tangalooma, that has fully fluent Mandarin staff. But the smaller businesses, I think that's a great support for the industry.
Yeah. Therese, you've got a background in cultural aspects, so you might like to make a comment on that as well.
I should fess up, I worked for Kentucky, so I'm not quite sure cultural is the right word, but...
Pseudo-cultural.
Pseudo-cultural, yes. It's really interesting. I was fortunate enough to sit in on Trav Consult's workshops down on the Gold Coast, and one of the messages that they were giving to the industry who attended it is that being bilingual is very important, but being bicultural is even more important. And I think that's one of the dilemmas that faces our industry at the moment, is that we can teach them how to say badly, ni men hao, but we need them to understand the cultural nuances of this group of visitors that we're welcoming to our shores. If they can't understand the cultural nuance, then we will not be able to deliver on the experience that we market so well. So I think we need to keep in context the package that is the China market, and we need to be clever in bringing up to speed our industry so that they know what to do, where to go, who to speak to if they don't have the information. And I think that's probably a priority. I know that's a priority for Tourism Queensland in the next 12 to 24 months.
Okay. Anyone else want to make a comment on that? Frank?
Yeah, I just might, essentially, I think the Chinese are a lot more adventurous than, say, the Japanese visitors that we've had, and there was a lot of, we've gone through a huge concentration of trying to do the right thing by the Japanese. I don't think anybody here, particularly tour operators, should be afraid of dealing with the Chinese, because I think they're a lot easier, and as I said, far more adventurous and willing to try different things, and not as demanding as what the Japanese were. So I think it's going to be a very successful market for everybody.
David, have you got any comment on that as well, just on this whole language, cultural sort of misunderstanding, engagement, etc.?
Yeah, look, I think it's been in the media a lot lately. I think it's been referred to be able to speak Chinese doesn't mean you understand Chinese. We've all seen a bit about that. What we've done as a company, and we have about 340 staff, we have 45% of our market is international. We identified about probably 12, 14 years ago, pre-ADS, about the importance of China. I'm very critical of our tour guide programs in Australia. I'm very critical of federal and state governments' lack of desire to do something meaningful about it, because at the moment it's just token gestures. What we've managed to do, and this is a great way when we're changing cultures, we're very much an Australian resort. We employed, I think, 7 Chinese tour guides last year. We deliberately got people with absolutely no experience whatsoever, because we wanted to train them our way, and then we put them through to about a 2 to 3 month training program. The people that we picked are actually studying, majority of them at University of Queensland. They're studying hospitality, tourism, management in those fields, roughly. With visa restrictions, we can use those guys 20 hours a week at the moment, and we try and fulfil that quota to get them up to speed as much as possible. In holidays, we can use them 40 hours a week. I think our minimum base salary, to give an idea, is $20 an hour for a tour guide with no experience apart from the training we've given them. My frustration with the whole guide aspect and talking about culture and helping other Australian companies, it's not mandatory to be a tour guide, or there is no mandatory regulation in Australia to employ tour guides. We've made the comment before, and people have made it, that people view China as this cheap market. Yet if you go to China, if you're a tour guide, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong if anyone else knows better than myself, but I think you've got to do a 12-week course to become a tour guide. And then every 6 months you've got to go back and become accredited. You can only be employed by a licensed travel agent in China. If you do the wrong thing, not only does a tour guide risk losing their licence and suspension, the travel company does. So China enforces that, enforces it very effectively to try and control some of the black shopping or unsavoury practices. In Australia, if you can speak Mandarin and you speak English okay, congratulations, you can be a tour guide. 95% of tour guides are employed by shops. So leading on to another one without going on too far about it, because I'm quite passionate about this very subject, we're hearing about volume and numbers coming to Australia. There is no unified approach across our state and federal governments on this, and I think that's the challenge of the market. But if we're going to go into volume markets, our federal government and state government need to either embrace this aspect or the idea of mandatory tour guide, not an option, not a framework, mandatory enforced, or at the very least go and meet these duty-free shops in a proactive manner. I go and see duty-free shops as much as I see inbound travel agents and overseas trips. And I do overseas trips 5 times a year. At least 5 times a year I'm on the Gold Coast and Sydney meeting the Chinese duty-free shops, working out how the best way is to work with them, and by that hopefully have some influence in changing their culture. And as an industry, I believe we can improve in that area, and that'll help the industry as a whole.